Competitive base assaults have traditionally relied on static deployment variables, calculating exact drop points and letting the game's logic run. The June 2026 Anime Fury update breaks that model, introducing mechanics that force players to manipulate the internal AI in real time. This update moves beyond adding new content, requiring players to interface directly with the game's core AI logic to remain competitive. This timeline maps the 3 core tactical updates onto a strict chronological sequence. Phase 1 focuses on the opening with the Monolith Arrow. Phase 2 governs the mid-game with the Angry Spell. And Phase 3 controls late-game cleanup via the Ruin Witch. This sequence establishes a rigid algorithmic execution model. High-level attackers must follow this exact order of operations to extract maximum value from their army. To execute this model, we have to map out the specific mathematics and AI state machines driving these 3 items. Understanding these back-end engine mechanics is now the baseline requirement for competitive esports play. Deploying these advanced tactical tools requires a completely revamped macroeconomic engine. Supercell has replaced the tedious daily challenge grind with the hero journey, a linear progression track that directly converts cumulative account-wide hero levels into progression points and rewards. This directly addresses the historical bottleneck of upgrading equipment. The developers explicitly acknowledged that their previous ore economy was flawed and restricted player access to high-level tactics. This UX flowchart shows how Supercell is conducting real-time A/B testing on the game's economy. The player base is split into randomized groups, each assigned different numerical ore pricing values to isolate a sustainable mathematical balance. To stabilize the environment during this test, the system automatically applies catch-up multipliers to veteran and returning accounts, heavily boosting resource drop rates until their equipment reaches the competitive baseline. This aggressive economic experimentation supplies the capital required to fund the high-skill algorithmic combat we will now deconstruct. We begin our analysis at the exact moment a match starts, dropping straight into the complex underlying simulation data of the game engine. Phase 1 of this chronological attack model centers entirely on the Monolith Arrow. Upon activation, this epic equipment fires a single precision strike, dealing a fixed percentage of a target's maximum HP, regardless of total health pool. This graph plots the inverse scaling algorithm. The x-axis tracks total deployed housing space, while the y-axis tracks max HP damage percentage. To secure the maximum 14% yield, you must maintain a deployed capacity between 0 and 180. Pushing capacity into the immediate decay bracket between 181 and 250 space forces the yield to drop sharply to exactly 10%. Surpassing 251 deployed space cuts the damage to a mere 5% of the target's max HP. This mathematical decay penalizes late-game hero deployments. It forces players to rethink traditional deployment orders to extract maximum value. To stay within that premium damage bracket, we must analyze exactly how the game engine calculates live deployed capacity. The math relies on the hero weight rule. While heroes do not take up physical slots inside your army camps, the engine assigns each deployed hero a strict capacity value of exactly 25. Dropping a single hero onto the battlefield instantly burns 25 capacity points against that optimal 180 STs threshold. If you begin a match by deploying your Barbarian King and Archer Queen together, you instantly consume 50 capacity points before placing a single troop. This forces a specific meta outcome known as the early snipe. The strategy dictates deploying the Archer Queen in total isolation with minimal support at the very start of the match, triggering the Monolith Arrow before any heavy troops alter the scaling math. Optimizing this strict mathematical bracket dictates the pacing and chronological flow of the opening push. Once the opening snipe officially concludes, the attack naturally transitions into Phase 2, a chaotic period where static planning frequently fractures under pressure. The most common mid-game failure state is a funnel collapse. This occurs when the primary strike force ignores the base's core and paths outward to target external trash buildings. The Angry Spell operates as a manual AI override mechanism, bypassing numerical stat multipliers like a traditional rage spell. When dropped, it temporarily rewrites the target priority code of any troop inside its radius. This vector schematic illustrates a standard funnel collapse. Moving troop nodes project vector lines that lock directly onto external resource icons, entirely ignoring the central defense structures. Applying the angry spell radius directly over these nodes instantly severs the existing target lock. All vector lines snap inward, locking aggressively onto the central defense icons. The spell forces your troops into strict defense targeting behavior, correcting critical pathing errors on the fly. This elevates attackers from passive observers of unpredictable pathing into active, real-time editors of battlefield AI. With the core defenses compromised, the attack enters Phase 3. Here, the Ruin Witch is deployed as a late-game, non-attacking support unit. Her entire operational utility is governed by a strict conditional state machine that scans for specific environmental debris. This decision tree maps her AI scanning logic. The system registers a failure state if it encounters intact walls or invisible rubble, represented here by red X's. The single success state required for activation is a standard destroyed defense or resource structure. Once the AI locks on to valid rubble, it initiates a strict 4-second channeling spell. If the witch is interrupted or killed during this window, the spell fails completely. Even if successful, the unit possesses a hard cap lifetime. A single Ruin Witch will automatically despawn from the map the moment she summons her 8th Ruin Knight. These rigid constraints dictate her exact tactical placement. Because her conditional logic strictly requires a trail of broken structures and heavily drawn enemy aggro to survive the channeling window, she is mathematically forced into a trailing position directly behind a heavy vanguard push. The successful execution of these 3 phases aligns the attack's timing and logic into a single, synchronized operation. We can pull all 3 phases back together to map the unified, perfect chronological attack. Returning to our timeline, we populate the nodes with back-end data. Phase 1 houses the inverse scaling graph, Phase 2 holds the vector override, and Phase 3 contains the logic tree. Players must calculate opening math, execute mid-game AI overrides, and fulfill late-game logic gates. As Supercell concludes their ore economy experiments and wider player access expands, these exact high-skill mechanical requirements will quickly become the standard competitive baseline for all players. Winning at the highest competitive level requires calculating and anticipating these variables much faster than the opponent's base can ever react. The evidence of targeted AI overrides and mathematical scaling indicates that Clash of Clans now functions as a complex, real-time systems manipulation engine.
Yes, you. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Together, we'll conquer anything.